As I stepped off the plane and onto the warm, sandy beaches of Cancun, I couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement and anticipation for what was supposed to be the perfect spring break vacation with my friends. Little did I know, it would quickly turn into a horrifying nightmare. We checked into our hotel, located right on the edge of the crystal clear ocean, and immediately changed into our swimsuits to soak up some sun. The day went by in a blur of laughter, music, and tropical drinks. As the sun began to set, we decided to explore the busy nightlife of Cancun. The streets were packed with people from all over the world. Looking to have a good time and let loose, we joined the crowd, dancing and drinking our way from one bar to another. Everything seemed perfect until I noticed a strange man watching us from a distance. He was tall and menacing, with a sinister smirk on his face. I quickly brushed it off, thinking he was just a creepy local trying to make some money off of tourists. But every time I turned around, he was still there, watching us with an unsettling intensity. Feeling uneasy, I suggested to my friends that we head back to our hotel. But as we made our way through the crowded streets, I could feel the man's eyes following us. We picked up our pace, but so did he. Suddenly, I felt a hand grab my arm, and I turned to see the man standing right behind me. "Come with me," he said in a deep, chilling voice. "I have something to show you." I yanked my arm away, and we ran as fast as we could back to our hotel, not daring to look back. Once we were safely inside, we locked the door and huddled together, trying to calm our racing hearts. The next morning, we decided to put the previous night's events behind us and make the most of our vacation. We booked a snorkeling tour, excited to explore the underwater world and see the beautiful coral reefs. As we were snorkeling, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching us. I kept glancing over my shoulder, but saw nothing except the vibrant sea life. That is, until I saw a dark figure lurking in the shadows of the ocean floor. At first, I thought it was just my imagination, but then I saw the glint of a knife in his hand. I immediately signaled to my friends to swim back to the boat. As we hastily made our escape, the man started swimming towards us, his knife gleaming in the sunlight. We jumped and scrambled onto the boat, and the captain quickly navigated us back to shore. Shaken and terrified, we returned to our hotel, determined to stay inside for the rest of our trip. But the scary encounters didn't end there. Every time we left the hotel, we would see the same man lurking around, watching us. It was like he was always one step behind us. On the fourth day of our trip, we decided to take a break from the beach and explore some of the nearby ruins. As our tour guide led us through the ancient structures, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being followed. And when we reached the top of the main pyramid, my worst fear was confirmed. The man was there, waiting for us with a crazed look in his eyes. Without a word, he lunged towards us, his knife glinting in the sun. We all screamed and ran as fast as we could, but he was right on our tail. It was like a scene straight out of a horror movie. Finally, we made it back to our hotel and barricaded ourselves in our room. We called the police, but by the time they arrived, the man was gone. We gave our statements, but there was nothing they could do. It seemed like the man had disappeared into thin air. The rest of our spring break trip was spent in fear and paranoia. Every time we heard a noise or saw a shadow, we all jumped, thinking it was him. It wasn't until we boarded the plane back home, exhausted and relieved, that we finally felt safe. To this day, I still have nightmares about that spring break trip. I don't know who that man was or why he was after us, but one thing is for sure, our seemingly perfect vacation turned into a terrifying nightmare that we would never forget. When we are on deserted road, a chill ran down my spine. The sun had just set over the horizon, casting a shadow over the barren landscape. I had been looking forward to this spring break trip with my friends for weeks, but now a feeling of unease began to creep over me. We had planned to spend the week at an old abandoned cabin deep in the wilderness, away from the hustle and bustle of city life. Our college campus had been closed due to the ongoing pandemic, and we were desperate for a change of scenery. Little did I know that this trip would turn into a nightmare beyond my wildest dreams. My friends and I, a group of 5, began our hike towards the cabin that was supposed to be our home for the next few days. The trees loomed over us, and the sound of rustling leaves echoed in the stillness of the evening. As we trudged along, I couldn't shake off the feeling of being watched. Every time I turned to look, I found myself staring at empty space. Finally, after what seemed like hours, we reached the cabin. It was dilapidated, with peeling paint and broken windows. I remember thinking that it would take a lot of work to make this place livable, but my friends were ecstatic. They couldn't wait to start exploring and make it their own. As soon as we entered, I knew something wasn't right. The air was musty, and the furniture was covered in thick layers of dust. I shrugged it off, thinking that it was just an abandoned cabin after all. We started unpacking and getting settled in, but no matter what I did, I couldn't shake off the feeling that we weren't alone. That night, we gathered around a campfire, telling scary stories and roasting marshmallows. As the night wore on, the woods around us grew eerily quiet. My friends were all fast asleep, but I couldn't shake off the feeling that someone or something was lurking outside. I lay in my sleeping bag, listening intently to every sound, too scared to close my eyes. Suddenly, I heard a faint scratching noise on the window. I sat up, my heart pounding in my chest. The scratching grew louder and more insistent, and then I heard a voice whisper my name. My blood ran cold as I tried to wake my friends, but they were deep in slumber. I sat there, frozen in fear, as the scratching grew louder and the voice became more desperate. Finally, it stopped, and the cabin fell silent once again. I didn't dare close my eyes for the rest of the night, and as the first rays of morning light peeked through the window, I breathed a sigh of relief. The next day, my friends and I explored the surrounding areas, hoping to find some answers about the creepy incident from the previous night. We found a small cemetery hidden deep in the woods, and upon further investigation, we discovered that the cabin was built on top of an old burial site. My friends brushed it off as a coincidence, but I couldn't shake off the feeling that we were not welcome in this place. As the days went by, strange things started happening around the cabin. Objects would move on their own, and the temperature would suddenly drop to freezing levels, even though it was the middle of spring. My friends joked about a ghost haunting the cabin, but I knew that something was not right. One night, as we sat around the campfire again, we heard a loud banging on the cabin door. My friends thought it was just an animal trying to get in, but I knew better. The banging grew louder and more forceful, as if someone was desperately trying to break in. Suddenly, the door creaked open, and a gust of cold wind blasted into the cabin. We all screamed as we saw a ghostly figure standing in the doorway, its eyes glowing red. In a panic, we ran out of the cabin and into the woods, not knowing where we were going. We could hear the ghostly figure chasing after us, its haunting cackle getting closer and closer. Finally, we reached a clearing where we saw an old abandoned church. We ran inside, hoping to find some refuge, but the ghostly figure had followed us. As it approached, I could see that it was an old lady with a twisted, sinister grin on her face. She reached out to touch me, and I felt a surge of cold energy pass through my body. That's when one of my friends shouted, "This must be the old lady who lived in this cabin before it was abandoned. She died alone in this very church. We had disturbed her resting place, and she had been trying to get us out of her home." With that realization, the haunting stopped, and the old lady's spirit disappeared into thin air. We left the next morning, shaken and grateful to have survived our spring break horror. Looking back, it was definitely the most terrifying and suspenseful trip of my life, and one that I never want to experience again. From that moment on, I always made sure to do thorough research before going on any more trips. Who knows what other horrors could be awaiting me? My friends and I were heading to a secluded beach house for a week of sun, sand, and unlimited partying. It was the perfect way to unwind after a tough semester at college. We arrived at the beach house late in the evening, tired but eager to start our vacation. The house was located on a remote stretch of beach, surrounded by dense woods. It felt like we were in our own little paradise, away from the chaos of the city. The first few days of our trip were everything we had hoped for. We spent our days lounging on the beach, sipping on tropical drinks, and dancing the night away at the local clubs. It seemed like nothing could go wrong. But then on the fourth day, things took a turn for the worse. It started with a strange feeling of unease that crept over me as I woke up that morning. I tried to shake it off, thinking it was just a case of too much partying the night before. But as the day went on, the feeling only grew stronger. My friends didn't seem to notice anything was off, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. Every time I turned around, there was no one there, but I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was following us. That night, we decided to have a bonfire on the beach. As we sat around the fire, roasting marshmallows and sharing ghost stories, I couldn't help but feel on edge. I kept scanning the darkness beyond the fire's glow, half expecting to see someone lurking in the shadows. At one point, I excused myself to use the bathroom in the beach house. As I walked back, I noticed a figure standing on the edge of the woods watching me. My heart raced as I quickened my pace, my mind racing with thoughts of who it could be and why they were watching us. When I reached the group, I told them what I had seen. They laughed it off, saying it was probably just a local out for a late-night walk. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The next day, we decided to explore the woods behind the beach house. It seemed like a fun adventure, and my friends were excited to go on a hike. But as we ventured deeper into the woods, the feeling of being watched intensified. I tried to brush it off, not wanting to ruin the day for my friends. But as we walked, I noticed strange symbols carved into the trees and rocks. They looked like some sort of ritualistic markings, and they sent a chill down my spine. Just as I was about to suggest we turn back, we stumbled upon an old, abandoned shack. It looked like something out of a horror movie, with its crumbling walls and broken windows. My friends were excited to explore it, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we were not alone. As we stepped inside the shack, the air felt heavy and oppressive. The walls were covered in more of the same markings we had seen in the woods, and the floor was littered with bones and other strange objects. I was about to suggest we leave when we heard a loud noise coming from outside. We rushed out of the shack, only to find that someone had set fire to our beach house. The flames were spreading quickly, and we were forced to watch helplessly as our vacation home burned to the ground. In a panic, we ran back to our cars, only to find that they had been tampered with. The tires were slashed, and the windows were smashed. It was as if someone wanted to trap us there. We were stranded in the middle of nowhere, with no way to call for help. Panic set in as we realized that we were being targeted by someone or something sinister. As we huddled together, trying to come up with a plan, we heard a voice. It was coming from the woods, and it was chanting in a language I didn't recognize. We were frozen in fear as the voice grew louder and closer. Just when we thought we were doomed, a group of locals appeared, drawn by the fire and the chanting. They explained that the symbols we had seen were part of a local legend about a witch who lived in the woods. According to the legend, she would lure unsuspecting travelers into her realm and torment them until they were driven mad. We were lucky to have escaped, they said, as the witch only appears during the spring break season. As we left the beach, our vacation cut short by the terrifying events, I couldn't shake the feeling that we had narrowly escaped something truly sinister, and I promised myself that I would never return to that cursed beach again.